Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about astrology, money, and wealth. And the first thing I want to talk about is the natal chart. Now, the first thing is, I think, to look at the chart and just kind of give it an overall look and see, first thing, see how many planets you have in Earth signs, because this can play a very strong role, because Earth energy is about pragmatism, practicality. It can be about economical sense and being astute in financial matters, a lot of common sense, which could play a role in making money. If you have a preponderance of energy in Earth, this could be favorable. And I am including the ascendant and MC as well in this. So that is one thing to look at. But keep in mind, if you have no planets in Earth and your MC and your ascendant are non-Earth signs, it's not necessarily the end of the world, because you could have compensation by house position. Now, if you have a number of planets in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses, well, this could be auspicious and favorable for money as well. Now, you look at the renowned Oprah Winfrey. Now, she has no, best of my recollection, she has no planets and Earth signs, and her ascendant and her midheaven are non-Earth signs. However, she does have late Sagittarius rising, which is on the cusp of Capricorn, and of course her ascendant progressed into Capricorn really in relatively short time in relation to her birth. So, I mean, that plays a role, but she does have a number of planets, I believe 6 planets in the 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses. And she also has the North Node in Capricorn as well in her 1st house. So those are some reasons why I think she showed certain astuteness in terms of making money, generating income, in a lot of financial sense. So you don't necessarily have to have an abundance of Earth energy to be adept in financial matters. Now, and really those are the first two things, the Earth energy, and then see if you have any compensation by house position, 2nd, 6th, and 10th houses. Now, it's also important to look at your 2nd house, look at the sign that's on it, and that will play. I mean, that is something to look at. And with me, I have Gemini on the cusp of the 2nd house. And with Gemini, okay, Gemini in the 2nd can show versatility, diversity, and variety in terms of making money. And Gemini in the 2nd could be favorable for maybe generating income in a communications field, whether it might be data communication, satellite communication, broadcasting, journalism, writing in general. I worked as a sports writer for a number of years for a local paper. I also have Mercury, the ruler of the 2nd, making a trine to my 6th house Jupiter. So that played a role in that as well. And the thing too is, you look at the ruler of the 2nd house and see what house that falls in. Let's say somebody has the ruler of the 2nd house in the 4th house. Well, that could indicate perhaps somebody making money in a 4th house profession. It could be something with real estate, cultivating, gardening, perhaps construction, something associated with property, or somebody that might work out of the home. Let's say, for example, if that ruling planet was Mercury, it could be some kind of communication out of the home. If it's Jupiter, it could be something connected maybe with some kind of teaching out of the home, or maybe even doing some publishing out of the home. So those are some things to look at in terms of your natal chart and money. And it's also important to look at Venus in your natal chart, because Venus, of course, is associated with money. And like in my chart, I have Venus square Saturn it squares my ascendant, it makes a long square to my natal Neptune, and it semi-squares my Mercury, the ruler of my second house. Now that square to Saturn, I think, is a biggie with me, and I think that plays a role in why I've had some financial difficulties over the years. So, I mean, you have to look at the whole chart. I have the part of fortune conjunct my second house cusp, and really a lot of people look at that and they say, well, oh, you should be that should be a fortuitous placement for money, you should be making an exorbitant amount of money. Not necessarily. You have to look at the whole chart, as I've said in my other a lot of my other videos, that you gotta look at the whole chart and take it into consideration. Now my part of fortune is in Gemini conjunct the second house cusp, so that could be auspicious and favorable for making money through some kind of communication field, but it doesn't give a guarantee you're going to make a lot of it. So those are some things to look at as far as money and wealth in your natal chart. Now, another thing you want to look at too, you want to look at, okay, with Venus, I mean, if you have, as far as the aspects go, I talked about my chart, but let's say you have Venus making predominantly good aspects in your chart, that could be very good as well. And I mean, like with Oprah Winfrey, she had a number of planets in her second house making a trine to her sixth house Jupiter, and I think that helped her as well in terms of making money. If Venus makes predominantly good aspects, especially, I think a lot of times somebody has their Venus making a sextile trine or conjunction to their natal Jupiter, that could be very propitious and very favorable as well. Venus conjunct Jupiter in the second house, I think, could be very good. You'd have Venus in its, you would call it its accidental dignity in the second house. If it makes a conjunction to Jupiter, the planet of luck, that could be very good. So, anyway, it's also important to look at the transits, and that could indicate perhaps some indicators for some money and some wealth. Now, let's say you have transiting Jupiter transiting your second house, and let's say it makes a sextile trine or conjunction to your natal Venus. That could be auspicious and favorable. Venus transiting your second house could be good as well. And if it makes a sextile trine or conjunction to your natal Jupiter, of course that would help. If it just simply makes predominantly good aspects, that is good as well. I think that would be favorable. And also, when you look at your chart too, it's also important to look at, well, when you look at when you look at astrology and about money and affluence, and look at the progressed chart as well, because progressions can play a role. Now, let's say you have the progressed Jupiter in your progressed second house. Well, that could be advantageous for money, especially if it does make predominantly good aspects, especially I would say also if it makes a sextile trine or conjunction to your natal Venus. Or you could have in your progressed chart the Venus in the progressed, if you have in your progressed chart, if Venus is in the second house in the progressed chart and it makes predominantly good aspects, that's another thing to look at, to predominantly good aspects to your other planets in your progressed chart. If it sextile trines or conjuncts your natal Jupiter, that could be good. Another positive or auspicious thing could also be perhaps having the progressed part of fortune either on the ascendant in the progressed chart or the progressed part of fortune at your second house in the progressed chart, and making good aspects. Progressed part of fortune making a sextile trine or conjunction to the progressed Jupiter could be auspicious and favorable as well. And it can also, if it makes let's say it makes a sextile trine or conjunction to the natal Venus, that could be favorable as well. So those are some things to look at in astrology as far as money and wealth, and also, as I talked about before, some things which could indicate some hardships. And most people, in terms of generating income, they're going to go through their trials and tribulations, and most people are not going to have money throughout or have an exorbitant amount of money throughout their life consistently. People do go through fluctuations with this. They do have their ups and downs, and even though some people don't agree with this, I'm very steadfast in the view of the stars may impel, but they don't compel, because the thing about it is you could have a chart that is very favorable for making money, and even whether it's your natal chart, transits, or progressions. But let's say, for example, that somebody has just becomes stagnant. They wallow in self-pity. They become very introverted. They spend all this time on introspection and self-analysis, but they don't really do anything to actually take the action to make money. Those are some situations that could happen. You could have the most favorable chart for generating money, but if you don't really do anything about it, then that really it just goes to waste. A lot of times too, in a lot of cases, people have a really, you don't want to say an overabundance or surfeit of positive aspects in their chart, but some people can have a lot of sextiles and trines in their chart, and sometimes what that does is that winds up becoming complacency can set in, and people can become self-satisfied because of this and not really make that effort to make themselves that much better, and that could apply to augmenting their income as well. So it's really about, it's really about doing, it's about action, and it's not about just saying, well, I have a great chart for money, so this money just going to fall right in my lap. Not necessarily. You still have to go out and make the action. And the one last thing I wanted to get at that I didn't state earlier in the video, and I'm sorry, I should have stated it earlier, was the 8th house as well, because the 8th house is about others' resources, and it's about inheritances. So, if you have if your chart, you would say you have Jupiter or Venus in the 8th, makes predominantly good aspects. That could be very positive, perhaps through things connected with others' resources. I have Sagittarius on the cusp of the 8th. Now, I haven't really, I never inherited really hardly anything, if I can remember, from anybody, but I've had general good luck with others' resources. People have helped me out in a pinch. Friends have come to me in my time of need when I was down and out in a state of near destitute or impoverished situation. So in certain ways, I've been very lucky with others' resources, but it doesn't give a guarantee or assurance of getting a lot of money from other people, but it can be favorable for inheritance. And like I stated before, Venus and or Jupiter in the 8th making a lot of good aspects in your chart are good. If you get a transit from Jupiter to your natal 8th house, a transit from Venus, and one or both of them, they're making good aspects, a lot of predominantly good aspects, that's positive as well. And also in the progressed chart as well. Even whether it's Venus, Jupiter, even progressed part of fortune in the 8th house, I think could be fortuitous for perhaps an inheritance or just something connected with someone else's resources, maybe somebody helping you out. It could be a loan, or it could just be something where you manage to come into something from another person, where somebody might just be very magnanimous and just might really help you out and might maybe give you a little bit more monetarily than you might have actually anticipated. So those are some things to look at as far as astrology, money, and wealth. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology, money, and wealth. And stay tuned next time, where I will be continuing my series on the moon's transits through the signs. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.